All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Where Data Meets Business podcast, in which we discuss how data driven approaches can help you achieve business outcomes bigger, better, faster. I'm Sonia Kitkar, a former academic and researcher, current consultant, data enthusiast, and forever New Yorker. In today's podcast, we're going to cover a few different topics related to using generative and predictive AI or artificial intelligence to create videos with a high likelihood of success. In other words, using data driven approaches to develop your high potential marketing and other content. And if you like this episode, please share and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or your chosen podcasting platform so that you don't miss anything. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, databusiness.substack.com. So, my guest today is Paul Greenberg. Paul is a three-time CEO with a proven track record of growth across multiple media companies and deep expertise in digital video creation, monetization, and distribution. He's currently CEO of Butterworks, which uses both generative and predictive AI in the creation of video. Previously, he was CEO of College Humor, where he grew it to be the number seven YouTube channel in the world, CEO of Nylon, where he grew revenue by 150%, and executive vice president at A&E Networks, where he oversaw the creation of the number two show on Snapchat. He has also been president of digital at Time Inc. and EVP of TV Guide Digital. Paul, thank you for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I mentioned some of your professional achievements in your introduction, but it would be great to track your career journey for us. So how did you get here?
So I actually started my career as a sportscaster on the radio in New York on 1010 Wins. I did that right out of college for about 5 years, and I loved it. I also did voiceovers for commercials. So I was really on the creative side of the business. I wanted to get into the management side so I could have the ability to understand how the creative process worked, but also start to influence the running of companies. So I got my MBA, and my first job after that was at MTV, where I helped them start new cable channels. And then I also helped run MTV.com, and we did a number of M&A deals and some joint partnerships and things like that. That was great. Then I moved on to a company called MusicNet, which was a sort of B2B Spotify. It was back-ending people who wanted to have their own digital music service. And before there was sort of Spotify and Apple Music, there were a lot of companies who had their own music services. So I did that. Then I moved on to TV Guide Digital, as you mentioned. Then I was at Time Inc. Then I was CEO of College Humor, and then CEO of Nylon. Then I went to A&E, and then I started Butterworks. And as you mentioned, we're a digital video firm with a strong focus on AI. And we are working with a number of different clients, helping them create video, figure out what kinds of videos to make, and generally, helping them on go-to-market strategies.
That's fascinating. I think it's really interesting what you mentioned about going from the creative to the business side, because, in reality, everything is a balance of art and science, right? It's particularly with content creation, you have the creation process, and then you have the management of that creative process. So I was just wondering how easy or difficult was that transition, and how has the creative background perhaps helped you, move it forward?
It wasn't that hard a transition, to be honest, and it's really been incredibly helpful. Most of my career, I've managed people. At least some of the people who have reported to me have been creatives, and so really understanding the creative process, what they go through, how they like to work, has been really, really helpful for me. And I think that one of the things, just to get it back to AI, people are concerned about AI pulling people out of the process and replacing people. But because I have such a strong background in creative and understanding creative, it's important to me to realize that AI needs to work with people, and that we need, on the creative side particularly, to have AI be a tool for creatives to use that guides them in their journey, or that they can use to guide their journey, but that doesn't necessarily replace them. And I think, it's going to be very difficult for that to be the case.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you address that elephant in the room, because everybody is super concerned about, AI sort of replacing their jobs, especially now that it gets more into becoming better at doing creative stuff, right? Which was never the case before. Now it can write for you. It can, I believe OpenAI just released a feature or a product called Soro, I think, which now does, or Sora, which does, creates 1 minute video. So that's interesting, and we'll touch upon that later. But I want to dig a little bit into your, all the work that you just talked about. Before we do that, just to sort of level set and bring people on the same page, I was wondering if you could clarify some terminology for us, right up front. AI, artificial intelligence, has become a bit of a catch-all term, because everybody says AI, and in reality, there are so many layers to it. So, I guess from your perspective, or in the context of your business's use case, how would you define AI to start with, and then we can go into a couple of the layers.
That's a very good question. To your point, it is a bit of a catch-all. I mean, it can include natural language processing and machine learning and computer vision and generative AI and predictive AI. The way we use it is both on the predictive and the generative side, and it's using machines to help people with creative, with figuring out what to create, and then helping them actually create that kind of content. So I think if you had to boil it down as much as possible, I think that's really what we're focused on, is where machines can augment human creativity.
Thank you for clarifying that. To dig a little bit deeper, definitionally, how would you sort of describe the difference between generative AI versus predictive AI in the creation of videos as well?
Yeah. So predictive AI is sort of what it, uses the name predictive for a reason, because what it's doing is it's looking at mounds and mounds of data from the past, and trying to predict the future, and trying to figure out what kind of, for us, what kinds of videos are going to be most successful, for social media, for things like that. But it's looking at an enormous amount of data from the past, and trying to figure out, well, how do we go forward, and where are sort of guardrails that creatives can play in, and kind of giving them, narrowing down from a full blue sky approach, of like, wow, what do I create, to, giving them some lane lines to play in, to say, okay, this is something that if you focus on this, you're probably going to be most successful. Generative AI is the actual creation of the video itself. So you referenced Sora, which was released to the public yesterday. It's been around for 6 or 7 months, but they did go into OpenAI did go into wide release yesterday. But there are other players out there. There's Runway and Luma and Pika and Kling, who have been doing some similar things as well, generative AI. And so, it's being able to use a lot of those different tools to help create video. Then there are also tools like Hey Gen, which will help you make a digital avatar of yourself, so that you can just use text prompts to actually create what you're speaking. So you're not actually, it's a digital twin of yourself. So that's another form of generative AI in the video space.
Got it. And just for everyone listening, anything that Paul referred to in this video and or audio, we're going to link it. So don't worry about the sources; you'll have those. All right. So thank you for clarifying that. Now that we're all on the same page with how we're defining each of those terms, maybe you could talk a little bit about how businesses are using AI in the creation of videos. What's the purpose? And I think if you could give an example, that would be great. Just so that we can sort of understand the case better.
So they're using it in a number of different ways. One is to actually create small snippets of video. Coca-Cola just released an all AI version of a commercial for their holiday commercial with their famous Christmas trucks. It had mixed reviews, to be honest, but it was a pretty cool display of what can be done in generative AI. Similarly, people are using it for storyboarding and for creating, customized corporate videos. There's a great company called Augie, which helps you create a lot of different kinds of video by pulling in stock videos and writing scripts for you and creating the music bed and creating the voiceover and sort of building the video for you. And then there are things like the digital twin, which I mentioned. So we've been using that. We've worked with a healthcare network of cardiologists who are creating a video portal for patient education. And we're working with them on building out the portal itself. But we've been using digital twins to have doctors create customized videos for patients, so that when a patient logs in to watch a certain playlist that the doctor has recommended they watch about their condition, they see the playlist introduced by their doctor, which gives them some familiarity and hopefully creates better outcomes for the patients.
Wow, that was really interesting. The cardiologist story, because of course we need a lot more of education where healthcare is concerned. So that's a really good use case. I also wanted to sort of go back to one of the points you made about Coca-Cola. Everybody sort of, well, not everybody, but a lot of people who kind of followed that kind of information were surprised by the fact that they did use, those kind of technologies to create their ad. And recently, and I don't know how true this is, but even Spotify came under a lot of criticism for their, for the sort of this sort of like a compilation of people's viewing or listening habits on Spotify called Wrapped, which they released, and a lot of people sort of were unhappy because they thought that AI was, and I'm not sure if it was or wasn't, but was used to kind of create that, as opposed to people doing it, and the human touch, so to speak. So not to change topics, but do you think that is something we're going to see more of, or, how can companies address that?
I think we're going to continue to see more of it as the technology gets better and better. Spotify, one of the AI parts of Wrapped was that they had a podcast that was AI generated, where there were two people talking about your favorite artists and your favorite artists from the year and your trends and things like that. And we're starting to see a lot more of that. Google has a product called Notebook LM, which you can upload a document and it will create a podcast that out of that document, that sort of where the people are talking about what's in it. 11 Labs is doing something similar to that. So we're really starting to see more and more of AI get into the mainstream in terms of generating content. And I think that's just going to continue more and more, to be honest. I mean, I agree with you. The human touch is great, but when you're talking about however many hundreds of millions of people subscribe to Spotify, it's not scalable to use people. Whether or not the podcast was something that worked is up for debate, but I think that people will continue to use it more and more, particularly as they need to scale.
Yeah, no, true, and it definitely makes it, as you said, easier to scale and get more information out there as well, which is not possible if you're only using one particular type of method. Um, okay, so kind of getting into data, which is where data meets business, is of course the name of this podcast. But I wanted to also talk about how data, which is essentially the wind beneath AI's wings, what is the role of data in your AI solution?
So we use data in a number of different ways, but I'd say the main way is in the predictive way that I was talking about earlier. We have been working on, we have a solution where people will come to us and say, hey, I want to know and understand better what kind of content, video content I should create to be most successful. And so, for example, we worked with Animal Planet, where they came to us and said, "Hey, what kind of content should we be creating?" And so we looked at the previous 3 months of tens of thousands of animal videos across social media to try to understand what was going on and what was most successful. So we used computer vision, where a computer actually looks at the images in different videos to understand what's going on. And then we used another form of AI called natural language processing, where we looked at the transcripts of what had been spoken in those videos, and we matched all of that up and were able to figure out what was happening in each video. Then we clustered those by different subtopics. And then we matched that up with views and engagement to figure out which subtopics were going to be the most successful. So that's predictive AI, where we're trying to predict the future of what's going to work best. So, for example, we found out that dog and cat videos do very well, but they're way oversaturated. There are too many of those videos. It's going to be really hard to break through that noise. Animal babies and animals giving birth did very well, high views, high engagement. And there was there were fewer of those videos out there. And so basically we were able to go to them and say, hey, if you're going to create videos about animals, you should really focus on videos about animal babies and animals giving birth, because you're going to have a much higher chance of success. We're starting to see those videos do well. And so you can catch the wave before it crests by figuring out, by approaching those kinds of videos with your creative team and focusing on those as opposed to some other ones. Interestingly enough, it sort of told us what not to do as well. So, for example, exotic animals and videos about fishing did very poorly. So we were able to say to them, I know you may be thinking about creating videos about fishing, but at least on social media, those don't do very well, probably because they're kind of slow moving. So don't waste your time on those. You really should focus on these other things that we were able to use the data to help them figure out.
Got it. Do you think for the videos that you're talking about, and you mentioned social media, do you think the platform for social media also differs? Like, do you think that, Instagram is going to have a different, maybe some people more like the fish videos more, or I mean, I don't know if that's true for Instagram, but I'm just sort of giving an example there, or then for Twitter or any of the others, Snapchat, so do you think there's a platform effect there, and is that something you also capture?
Absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah, no, we definitely look at individual platforms because it does vary from platform to platform. So, for example, on TikTok, we looked at the facial expressions that videos started with to see how successful certain facial expressions were. Interestingly enough, happy expressions, starting a video with a happy expression, doesn't necessarily translate to success in the way that a disgusted or an angry expression works a little bit better. And then we were also able to say, well, if you're going to create a video with a disgusted expression, it should be 31 seconds long. If you're going to start with an angry expression, it should be 23 seconds long. And that was very specific to TikTok. When we're looking at YouTube, obviously longer videos do well. Looking at Instagram, things are very different. So yeah, we did look at, that was what I was talking was sort of an amalgam of the platforms with the fishing and things like that. But yes, when we dig deeper, we do it platform by platform.
Got it. Okay. And then one more point before we kind of move on to the next topic is in the same use case that you were talking about. How do you define success? Like, you talked about certain animal videos being more successful than others. So how is success defined here? Is it number of likes? Is it number of what's the metric used?
So it's really views and engagement that we look at together. So engagement is likes, comments, and shares. And we have an algorithm that we built that combines those two and kind of comes up with a score that's able to say which videos are doing better than other videos. And as the platforms change their their focus. Instagram and Facebook just said, well, views are the most important metric right now, which they hadn't said in the past. They really had focused more on engagement. We're able to kind of keep up with that and hopefully make sure that whatever score we're giving to the different videos is really focused on the appropriate metric for that platform.
Got it. Okay, so kind of moving on a little bit and rounding up this content discussion, where do you see this field of AI for videos kind of moving in the future? Now we've already got a glimpse of it a little bit with the OpenAI release that we just talked about, which is the text to video model. So is voice to video next? I mean, how do you see it? Where do you see it going?
I think image to video and video to video is next. So, for example, with Sora, you can upload a sort of starter image. With all of them, Runway and Pika, you can upload a starter image and it will sort of work off of that. And that's actually sometimes I find more successful than just text to video, where it kind of has to invent everything from the very beginning. If you find an image or use an image generator like Dolly or Midjourney to create an image that you're looking for and then feed that into the video generator, I find that those videos turn out to be much more successful. But I think, in terms of where it's going, we're already seeing certain platforms working with Hollywood. So, for example, Runway did a deal with Lionsgate, and they're going to start creating video together for Lionsgate shows and movies. Facebook did a deal with Blumhouse, so that they'll be working with them on creating content. Tyler Perry famously was going to build an $800 million video studio, and then he saw Sora and said, "I'm not building the studio because there's going to be no point to doing that." All AI is going to be the way of the future in terms of creating video. So it really is, I think, going to accelerate pretty fast as things like Sora and Runway get better and better, and the content's able to be generated even more realistically. So I think that it's going to accelerate pretty quickly, and yeah, ultimately, I think you're right. Voice to video is going to come, and all of these models are really multimodal, meaning that they work across images, text, video, voice, and so I think that's going to just continue to accelerate.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up the Hollywood point too, because as we both worked in media companies before, and that is something that is definitely making people in those companies kind of take a moment to just think about what their future holds. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's very much on point. So switching gears now and sort of coming back to you and your thoughts on this one issue that we all continuously work at, and some of us struggle with, which is the whole work-life balance, or I should say work-life integration, because I don't know if balance would be the perfect word for it. So how do you aim for that? How do you integrate, I guess, work life in your daily routine?
It's very difficult. You have to draw boundaries and say, I right now is, a little bit of time with my family. I'm not going to check my phone. And I find that sort of mini digital detox to be very helpful and makes me better when I do come back to work. But of course, I've always got my phone with me. I'm always checking texts and emails and Slack and everything that needs to be kept up to date. I'm in meetings a lot. I'm fortunate now because my kids are older. I have one who's in college and one who's about to go to college. So, I don't have to spend quite as much time with them as I used to. And not have to, but I just, it's, unfortunately, I don't get the ability to spend as much time with them as I want to. But I do think that, it's become a little bit easier to focus more on work as the kids leave. But it's very difficult. I wish I had a good answer. You want to make time for spouses and other family and friends, and it's just very difficult. And like I said, the only way I've found is to draw clear boundaries for myself. Sometimes that gives me a bit of a break. How do you do it?
Oh, I don't think I'm very good at it. So you know, I'm constantly context switching, which is very hard. You know, especially working on multiple things at the same time. And yeah, I don't think I have a great answer for it too. But I do ponder this one question, which related to that, which is, do you think technology has helped, or do you think it actually hinders us in terms of, you know, wanting to spend more time with the people we you know, want to spend time with, who are not part of our work life, our personal life, so to speak? Because on one hand you can say that, oh, you can communicate with anybody very easily, and anytime you want, you have like five different choices of modes of communication to choose from. But then again, that's a lot of you know, then you hear a ping on your phone and then you're back to your phone, you know. So do you think it has um, hindered or sort of, you know, helped us achieve that integration, if you will? I don't have a good answer to it myself, but I was wondering if you have a perspective on that.
I think it's hindered it. To your point, you get WhatsApp messages at all hours and Slack and everything else, and it's really hard to keep work at bay and to draw those boundaries that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely argue that technology has made it much more difficult. Before cell phones, people didn't call you at home. You left work and you left work and you were done. Nowadays, there are no boundaries, and it's fully integrated. And so, I mean, I like working and I enjoy it, and I enjoy the challenge and the excitement of doing that. But like I said, sometimes I need to force myself to take a break, because it's so easy to just get caught up and to be working 24/7. And I do think that with all the messaging platforms today, it does make it much more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I agree with a lot of what you said. So this was being interesting, but before we kind of close this, you know, close this out, I wanted to ask you if you brought up a lot of different points, which were very important and key to us better understanding how AI can contribute to content creation. So do you have any recommendations of podcasts? Documentaries, books, or anything where people can learn more about any of the topics that we talked about today?
Actually, one of the things that I do is I've joined a group called the AI Marketers Guild, which is really fantastic. They have meetups, they have virtual meetups every Wednesday, and they have guest speakers. And there's a great newsletter. And the guy who runs it, David Berkowitz, is very knowledgeable about AI. So I've met a ton of people and subscribed to lots of different newsletters from people I've met there. And really learn a lot every time that I connect with that group. And then they have in-person meetups and things like that. And there's a lot of resources that they provide. So it's free to join. I would highly recommend joining AI Marketers Guild. This is not an endorsement. I'm not there. They haven't paid me to say anything like this. I'm really a fan. But I think that's been one of the great ways, if I had to sort of pick one, that's helped me learn a lot about a lot of different parts of AI.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because you know, that is another thing that I think the pandemic taught us, the power of community and even learning together as a community and networking. And while yes, we can listen to podcasts and we can watch documentaries and all the, you know, the other sort of luxuries that media provides us, there is absolutely no substitute for, or at least I feel like there's no substitute for that in-person, you know, community, and or even virtual community for that matter, but just having community and having that interaction. So I'm really glad you brought that up, and I'll link that for folks as well if they want to know more about it. Paul, this has been great. I learned so much in this discussion. Thank you so much for being here. And bye, everyone. And I will see you next time on this podcast. Thank you again.
Thank you.